Dr. Elias Vorn worked quietly in the small medical station on the edge of the galaxy. The station was old, its walls scratched and faded, but it had everything he needed to do his work. It was the kind of place that most travelers ignored, too small and unimportant to appear on maps. Elias liked it that way. He liked the silence, the chance to focus on his patients, and the freedom to experiment with his own methods. That evening, the sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the station's floor. Elias was finishing the last of his paperwork when a sudden knock echoed through the room. He looked up from the table and frowned. Visitors were rare this far out, especially at this hour. "Come in," he called, trying to keep his voice calm. The door slid open slowly, revealing a figure shrouded in a dark cloak. The hood covered most of the person's face, but Elias could see a faint shimmer of silver hair and the outline of a tall, confident frame. They moved carefully, as though each step had been measured 1,000 times before. "I need help," the figure said, their voice low but steady. "It's my shoulder, I cannot move it." Elias noticed strange markings on the cloak and faint lines of technology woven into the fabric. He had seen advanced tech before, but never quite like this. It hummed quietly, almost alive. "Can you describe how it happened?" he asked, keeping his tone professional. "I fell during travel," the visitor said. There was no fear in the voice, only calm determination. Elias nodded and began examining the shoulder. At first glance, the injury seemed ordinary, but when he touched it, he noticed the joint had healed strangely, partially fused in an awkward position. This was unusual, and it required careful handling. Elias took a deep breath. "This might be tricky, I need to work carefully." They didn't flinch when Elias adjusted their arm, didn't speak, just let him work. Elias worked slowly, using a combination of human medical knowledge and his own improvised methods. He had no advanced scanners, no robotic assistance. Just his hands, his understanding of anatomy, and a few carefully chosen tools. He murmured to himself as he worked, trying different angles and techniques. Hours passed. Outside, the sun had disappeared completely, leaving the sky a deep shade of violet. Elias' hands ached, but he refused to stop. Finally, with one careful twist, he heard a small, satisfying click. The shoulder had returned to its correct place. The visitor flexed the arm, testing it. "You have done this perfectly," they said, almost in surprise. Their voice held a note of relief. Elias smiled, though he was tired. "Just doing my job," he said modestly. For a moment there was silence. Then the visitor leaned forward slightly. "Your hands, they are unusual. Your knowledge, rare. I am grateful." "That's what I do." The station was quiet again, empty except for him. He sat back in his chair, exhausted. Another strange day, another unusual patient. He had seen some odd things in his life, but there was something about that visitor that lingered in his mind. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. That night, Elias barely slept. His dreams were filled with distant stars and faint shadows of alien cities. He woke early, the memory of the cloaked figure still fresh. Yet as he dressed and prepared for another day, he dismissed it. Life went on, and he had work to do. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, a ship glided silently through space. Its hull gleamed under distant starlight, its engines whispering quietly. Inside, a figure sat in a high chair, observing the stars with a sharp, calculating gaze. The shoulder that had troubled them for years now felt perfect, free from pain. Every movement was precise, every thought clear. It was Empress Xyrella, ruler of the Tethian Empire, feared by countless worlds for her strength and cunning. Known for her ruthlessness, she had conquered systems that others thought untouchable. Yet for all her power, she had been limited by a single weakness, her injured shoulder. Now she moved without restriction. Her mind, once clouded by constant pain, was sharper than ever. Her generals and advisors noticed immediately. Orders were executed faster, strategies were more daring, and the empire moved with renewed purpose. She did not yet know the identity of the healer who had fixed her. All she knew was that the one who helped her had extraordinary skill, far beyond anything she had encountered. She intended to find them, to understand the mind that could heal what even her advanced technology could not. Back on the small planet, Elias went about his day as usual. Travelers came and went, minor emergencies appeared and were solved, and he tinkered with his medical devices. He was unaware of the ripple his actions had caused across the galaxy. Occasionally, he wondered about the visitor's strange aura, the unusual tech woven into the cloak, and the sense of calm authority that seemed to follow them. But he pushed the thought aside. The universe was full of odd people. He focused on his work, on the lives he could improve one patient at a time. Days passed. Elias treated injuries, fixed broken equipment, and assisted anyone who needed him. Yet little by little, whispers began to reach the edges of the galaxy. Stories of a human doctor with hands that could heal impossibilities spread quietly through communication networks. Some dismissed them as rumors, others as exaggerations. Among those who took notice were spies and scouts from distant empires. Some wanted the healer as an ally, some as a weapon. The galaxy, so large and full of conflict, was suddenly aware of one small, quiet human on a remote planet. Elias remained unaware, still focused on the next patient, the next challenge, the next small miracle he could perform with his skill and ingenuity. One evening, as he adjusted a broken medkit, a young traveler passed through the station. The traveler stopped to watch Elias work, curious about the methods he used. "I've never seen anyone do it that way," the traveler said. Elias smiled politely. "Sometimes you just have to think differently. Follow the problem, not the rules." After the mysterious visitor left, Elias returned to his daily routine. The days passed quietly on the small planet, the kind of quiet that allowed a man to focus entirely on his work. He treated minor injuries, fixed broken devices, and occasionally shared a cup of tea with travelers who came through the station. Life was simple, predictable, and comfortable in its own way. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Empress Xyrella moved with a new energy she had not felt in years. Her shoulder, once stiff and painful, now allowed her to move with full strength and precision. The simple act of healing had unlocked a mental clarity she hadn't realized she had lost. Strategies that had seemed impossible now made sense. Plans that had stalled under the weight of her injury moved forward effortlessly. Her generals noticed it immediately. Meetings that had been tense and short now lasted for hours, filled with careful, detailed planning. Xyrella's decisions were sharper, her commands executed faster, and her intuition about her enemies' moves was nearly flawless. For the first time in decades, the Tethian Empire felt unstoppable, not just because of its fleet or technology, but because its leader was fully capable once again. Back on Elias' planet, life continued as normal. He remained unaware that the woman he had treated was the most feared ruler in the galaxy. He thought nothing of the rumors that began to circulate quietly through trade networks and communication channels, rumors of a human doctor with hands that could perform impossible feats of healing. Traders told stories to friends, friends whispered to merchants, and the whispers reached ears in the most unexpected places. It began slowly. A scout ship from a nearby system arrived at the station one morning, not under attack or in emergency, but with curiosity. A single officer, uniform crisp and eyes sharp, stepped out. He watched Elias work as he repaired a medical scanner that had stopped functioning. The officer did not introduce himself. He simply observed, silently taking notes in a small device as Elias adjusted wires and calibrated sensors. When Elias looked up, the officer smiled politely. "You have a remarkable skill," he said. "Your methods are unusual but effective. There's no one method that works for everything." Meanwhile, Empress Xyrella's advisors were busy deciphering the mystery of her sudden recovery. She had said little about the human who healed her, only that their skill was extraordinary. Still, they knew enough to begin an investigation. Advanced scans of her shoulder had shown traces of a subtle energy pattern, human in origin, that no Tethian technology could replicate. Whoever this healer was, they were not of their empire. The Empress, though, was not concerned with the details. She was thinking bigger. With her strength restored, she could focus on consolidating power, exploring new alliances, and striking against enemies who had begun to grow bold during her period of weakness. She moved with purpose, her fleet reorganized, her diplomats sent to negotiate, and her spies quietly watching every corner of the galaxy for signs of opportunity or threat. Back on the small planet, Elias noticed subtle changes in the visitors who came through his station. Traders, travelers, and merchants asked questions about his work in ways that seemed slightly too specific. A few people lingered longer than necessary, observing the tools he used or taking careful notes on the methods he applied. Elias dismissed it. He was used to curious minds. He continued his work, focusing on the next patient, the next device, the next problem. One afternoon, a small transport ship landed unexpectedly. Its passengers were a family of 3, injured after a collision in the asteroid belt. Elias treated them quickly, his hands moving with confidence, repairing broken bones and torn tissue. While doing so, he noticed something unusual about the mother. Her wrist had a faint marking, glowing softly beneath the skin. Elias had seen advanced biotechnology before, but this marking pulsed differently than anything he knew. He noted it silently, curious, and continued his work. While the family rested, he stepped outside for a break. The wind carried the scent of minerals from the nearby hills, and the twin suns painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. He took a deep breath, letting the quiet settle around him. This was his life, small, unassuming, yet full of meaning in the lives he touched every day. Far away, a small fleet of ships belonging to the Solari Dominion began moving through the outer rim. They had heard rumors of the human healer, just as the Tethians had. Some thought he could be an asset, others feared he might disrupt their plans. They dispatched agents to locate him, disguised as traders, explorers, and repair crews. The galaxy, vast and complex, suddenly seemed to shrink around one man who had no idea of the power he now held in his hands. Elias remained oblivious to the pursuit. He was focused on his work and the small joys it brought him, seeing a patient recover, improving a device to make it more efficient, or helping someone understand a treatment they thought impossible. Yet the universe around him was beginning to stir in ways he could not see. One evening, as he repaired a small shuttle for a traveling scientist, a sudden alert flashed on his terminal. The shuttle's communication system had picked up a faint signal, an encrypted message, too short to read fully but originating from deep space. He frowned, intrigued. He had no reason to decode it, yet curiosity urged him forward. Carefully, he worked through the encryption, revealing a message that simply read, "We seek the healer. Your skills are known. Answer if you wish to live." Meanwhile, Empress Xyrella had begun planning her next move. She did not need soldiers or fleets yet. She needed information, knowledge of the healer who had restored her body. She dispatched a trusted envoy, someone skilled in both diplomacy and reconnaissance, to find Elias. The envoy would travel incognito, blending in with ordinary travelers, to observe the man who had unknowingly changed the course of the galaxy. Back on the planet, Elias' days continued in their quiet, ordered rhythm. He fixed broken arms, healed wounds, and made small improvements to medical equipment. Yet the first signs of change were beginning to appear. Visitors came with questions that hinted at knowledge beyond their station, and strange communications occasionally crossed his terminal. Still, Elias treated each day as normal, focusing only on what he could touch, see, and repair. Then, one night, while looking out at the twin moons reflecting light over the plains, Elias felt a strange energy in the air. It was subtle, almost like a whisper brushing past his senses. He looked around, but there was nothing visible, no ships, no travelers, only the quiet hum of the planet. Still, he could not shake the feeling that something had shifted. Something far larger than his station, larger than his life, was beginning to stir. Across the galaxy, the Tethian Empire moved in ways no one had expected. With Xyrella's renewed strength, she ordered reconnaissance missions to rival empires, negotiated new alliances, and subtly shifted her fleets to strategic positions. Her advisors marveled at her renewed vigor, not realizing that a single human's simple act of skill had sparked this transformation. In the outer rim, agents of the Solari Dominion were already on the move. They had picked up the faint traces of Elias' presence, following rumors and signals from traders and explorers. Some saw him as a potential weapon to exploit, others as a wildcard to neutralize. The galaxy, vast and complex, had suddenly focused its attention on a small, quiet planet where one man repaired bones and devices with extraordinary care. Elias remained unaware. He continued his work, treating a child with a broken leg, repairing a medkit for a traveler, and adjusting the shuttle's power circuits. Every action, every careful movement was shaping the galaxy in ways he could not imagine. At night, he often sat outside, gazing at the stars. He felt a quiet sense of peace in the vastness above him, never suspecting that the universe itself was paying attention to him now. He had healed a shoulder. That shoulder had belonged to the galaxy's most feared Empress, and from that simple act, everything had begun to change. The whispers across trade routes, the movements of fleets in the outer rim, the encrypted messages on hidden channels, all were connected to Elias. And yet, for now, he remained just a man in a small station, focused on helping those in front of him, unaware that his hands had already begun to change the course of history. The galaxy was waking. A ripple, started by a quiet, determined human, was spreading faster than anyone could predict. And soon, Elias would be forced to notice it. Elias Vorn had begun to notice subtle changes in his daily routine. The quiet life he had always cherished was starting to feel crowded. Visitors came more often, sometimes asking strange, pointed questions about his methods. Occasionally, a trader lingered too long near his equipment, taking notes and pretending to be curious about minor repairs. Elias dismissed it as coincidence. He was used to curiosity. After all, people always asked questions when they saw someone skilled at a craft they did not understand. But then came the first unmistakable sign, a visitor who did not leave. Elias was repairing a broken medkit when a tall figure appeared in the doorway. The visitor's posture was confident, their movements careful, as though they were trained to move silently in any environment. Unlike most travelers, this one did not ask for help, did not seek treatment, and did not introduce themselves. They simply watched. "You must be Doctor." "Vorn," the figure said, their voice calm and measured. Elias paused, looking up. "I am, can I help you?" "And yet, the universe seems to have noticed your work." "My name is Surin, and I am here on behalf of one who owes you a great debt. You healed Empress Xyrella of the Tethian Empire." I don't even know her," Elias said, disbelief in his voice. "None of us expected it," Surin replied, "but she is renewed because of you, and now others are taking notice." The quiet life he had known, the life where he could focus on healing one patient at a time, was gone. The galaxy, it seemed, was beginning to pull him in every direction at once. Surin crouched slightly, lowering their voice. "They will come for you soon, you must be ready, and yet you must remain yourself. That is why I am here, to guide you at least at first." "I don't know if I want to be guided, I just want to help people. I don't even know where to start." They asked questions about Elias' techniques, about the tools he used, about the principles behind his improvisations. Elias answered as best he could, though he often added just enough ambiguity to prevent them from understanding fully. It was human ingenuity, after all, that had healed Empress Xyrella. And now, he realized, that same ingenuity might be the only thing that could keep him safe. One morning, a young woman arrived at the station. She claimed to be a student of medicine, curious about Elias' methods. She was attentive, eager to learn, and unusually perceptive. Elias taught her small techniques, explaining the principles behind his work while carefully withholding the tricks that were uniquely his own. Later, when she left, Elias noticed a faint glow on her satchel. It pulsed with a subtle energy, and he realized it was some sort of data storage device. A chill ran down his spine. Even those who appeared innocent might be observing him for purposes he could not foresee. At night, he studied alien anatomy, tinkered with medical devices, and reflected on the subtle ways his life had shifted. He could feel the universe changing around him, as if the galaxy itself were aware of one small human making a difference. And he knew he had to prepare. Far away, Empress Xyrella's forces were already in motion. Her renewed strength had emboldened her to act decisively. Fleets moved in precise formations, diplomats traveled to distant systems to broker alliances, and intelligence networks searched for information about potential threats and assets. One of her priorities was clear: to learn more about the human who had healed her, the one whose skill had restored the Empress's full capabilities. Surin returned to Elias each day, quietly guiding him. They helped him understand the subtle ways attention could be drawn, how to remain safe without hiding completely, and how to use his skills without becoming a pawn. Elias began to grasp that his work was no longer only about healing. It was about surviving, navigating a galaxy that had suddenly become aware of him. One day, a report arrived at the station. It described a fleet moving near a nearby star system, unusually coordinated and unusually fast. Surin examined the data. "They may be scouts," Surin said, "or they may be here to test your limits. Others will want to see if you can do it again." That night, a small shuttle approached the station, cloaked in stealth technology. Elias watched from a distance, recognizing the energy signature as neither friendly nor hostile in the usual sense. The shuttle landed softly, and a single figure emerged. Unlike other visitors, this one moved with precision, every motion calculated and confident. "You are Elias Vorn," the figure said. "I am," Elias replied cautiously, "and you are. And because you must learn, quickly, how dangerous knowledge can be." He began to understand that this was a test, not of skill, but of patience, resourcefulness, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. By the time the visitor left, Elias felt drained but strangely empowered. He realized that his actions, his choices, and even the simplest application of his skills had consequences far beyond his small station. The galaxy, he understood, was now watching him. And yet he remained committed to his principles, to heal, to help, and to do no harm. Surin returned that evening, smiling faintly. You did well. They learned something, but more importantly, you learned something. The galaxy is watching, yes, but it is not your master. Your choices remain your own. He was no longer just a doctor on a small planet. He was a human whose actions had shaped events across star systems, whose hands had restored the strength of one of the most powerful rulers in the galaxy, and whose ingenuity had begun to attract attention from empires and factions alike. As he looked out at the stars that night, Elias understood something profound. The galaxy was vast and humans were small. But even the smallest beings could leave ripples that spread farther than anyone expected. And as long as he remained true to himself, he had the power to shape those ripples in ways that were thoughtful, careful, and, most importantly, human. The galaxy had begun to notice Elias Vorn, and soon he would have to notice it too. Elias Vorn had begun to understand that life on his small planet would never be the same. The quiet days of treating minor injuries and repairing devices were over. Rumors of his skill had spread further than he could imagine, reaching ears that were both curious and dangerous. He knew now that someone or several someones were watching him, and he had to be ready. The morning started like any other. The twin suns rose over the horizon, casting warm light over the plains. Elias was adjusting a portable medkit when a small shuttle landed at the station. This time, the visitors were not ordinary travelers. They moved with precision, their movements coordinated like a team who had trained together for years. Surin appeared at his side as he observed them. They are from the Solari Dominion, Surin said quietly. They want to recruit you, or take you by force if necessary. And that is why they will be careful, but also why they will be persistent. They have seen what you can do, and now they want it for themselves. They wore plain clothes, blending in with the ordinary surroundings. One stepped forward, smiling politely. Dr. Vorn, we have heard of your remarkable skill. We would like to offer you a position, one where your talents can be fully recognized. We want you to work with us to help our people, to enhance our technology, to heal. You will have resources, freedom to work, and safety. Refusal, however, may carry consequences. Surin stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on Elias' shoulder. Remember, Elias, you do not have to fight, you do not have to kill. You only need to use your mind and your hands wisely. That is your strength. But I am willing to help where I can, without harming anyone and without giving away my principles. Elias exhaled, feeling a weight lift, though tension still lingered. He realized the universe was no longer simply observing him, it was testing him, and he needed to be careful, thoughtful, and above all, human. That evening he worked quietly, repairing a minor shuttle engine for a traveling scientist. His hands moved steadily, his mind focused. Surin remained close, guiding him in subtle ways, suggesting strategies for staying safe without compromising his principles. You have a rare mind, Surin said. You can see the solutions others cannot. That is why they seek you. And that is why you must remain true to yourself. Use your skill not for war, but for understanding, for creativity, for compassion. But it feels heavy, like the galaxy itself is pressing down on me. They watched his every move, taking notes, asking questions, trying to learn from him without his knowledge. Yet Elias handled each encounter with patience and cleverness. He taught what was necessary, explained what could be shared, and kept the rest hidden. One day, a small child arrived at the station with a broken leg. Elias knelt beside the child, carefully examining the injury. Don't worry, he said gently. We'll fix this, and you'll be running again in no time. He treated the injury and asked quietly, Do you know how these markings got here? It reminded him that the galaxy was full of mysteries, and that his own work might inspire or interfere with developments he could not predict. Later that day, Surin spoke to him quietly. The Solari Dominion is persistent. They will not leave easily, and the Tethian Empire may wish to send more envoys now that Xyrella has regained strength. You are becoming important. More than you realize. Sensors detected a small fleet approaching the planet, moving too quickly to be ordinary traders. He glanced at Surin, whose expression had tightened. They are here, Surin said quietly. Not to negotiate. They are testing you or trying to force your hand. And yet he did not want to fight. He did not want violence. He wanted cleverness, strategy, and human ingenuity to guide him. He moved quickly, using what little technology he had to strengthen the station. Shields were powered, doors reinforced, communication channels secured. He also set up traps, not deadly ones, but obstacles that would slow intruders and give him time to react. When the fleet arrived in orbit, Elias could see the ships scanning the planet, their sensors probing for life signs, for power sources, for weaknesses. He worked steadily, using his understanding of the station's layout and technology to manipulate the readings. To the fleet, the planet appeared deserted, quiet, and unprepared. Hours passed. Small scouting ships descended, attempting to land near the station. Elias, guided by his ingenuity, managed to delay them with clever diversions, false readings, misdirected signals, and automated obstacles. None of it harmed anyone, but it bought him time. Finally, one of the scouting ships landed. A single officer emerged, scanning the area. Elias stepped forward to meet them, calm and composed. "I don't know what you expect to find here," he said, his voice steady. "This station is small, old, and not of interest. But I will not be forced to act against my principles, nor will I be used as a tool for harm." His life, which had once been small and quiet, now held consequences that stretched across star systems. And yet he refused to let fear dictate his actions. He would remain human, compassionate, and clever. He would use his ingenuity to protect, to heal, and to guide, not to dominate or destroy. That night, Elias sat outside, watching the twin moons reflect light over the plains. The wind carried the scent of minerals and soil, familiar and comforting. He thought of the people he had treated, the travelers he had helped, and the child with the glowing markings. He realized that no matter how complex the galaxy became, his power lay not in weapons, politics, or fleets, but in human skill, empathy, and intelligence. Surin stood beside him. "You have done well today. They will leave for now, but the tests will continue. You must be ready, but you must also remain yourself. That is your greatest strength. Not as a tool, not as a weapon, but as a human being capable of shaping the galaxy through thought, skill, and care." The night was quiet, but the stars above seemed brighter, more alive. Elias knew the galaxy was watching, and he knew that his choices mattered more than ever. He had faced his first challenge and survived. But he also understood that greater challenges were coming, tests of not only skill, but of principle, courage, and ingenuity. Elias Vorn, a simple doctor on a small planet, had begun to prove that even one human, acting with thought and compassion, could influence events on a galactic scale. And the galaxy would never forget it. Elias Vorn had learned a great deal since the day a mysterious woman arrived at his station with a dislocated shoulder. The galaxy had shifted around him in ways he had never imagined. Fleets had moved, spies had come and gone, and powerful rulers now quietly watched the small planet where one human worked quietly with his hands and mind. Yet Elias remained the same at heart, a doctor, a healer, and a thinker who wanted to help people, not dominate or destroy. One morning, a signal arrived on his communication system. It was encrypted, elegant in its simplicity, and unmistakably from Empress Xyrella herself. She requested his presence aboard her flagship. The message was clear. She wanted him to come willingly. There were no threats, no conditions, only an acknowledgement of his skill and a hint of curiosity. Elias read the message several times. His first instinct was caution. He knew the galaxy's powers would not leave him alone, and traveling to meet one of its most feared rulers could be dangerous. Yet another part of him, the part that always sought understanding and knowledge, felt the pull of opportunity. This was a chance to see the galaxy from a perspective few humans had ever known, to understand the consequences of his actions firsthand, and perhaps to guide them toward something better. Surin appeared beside him, as quiet and observant as ever. "It is your choice," they said softly. "You can remain here continuing your work in safety, or you can go and meet her. Either path will have consequences. Choose wisely. And remember, your strength lies in your principles, in your human ingenuity. Do not let them overshadow who you are." But he reminded himself of his own abilities. He did not rely on weapons. He relied on his mind, his hands, and his moral compass that had carried him this far. The journey through space was quiet, with only the hum of the small shuttle and the occasional message from Surin. Elias studied the stars, marveling at their scale and beauty. He had spent his life on a tiny planet, yet now the galaxy spread before him in all its complexity, full of strange systems, brilliant planets, and civilizations beyond imagination. Finally, the flagship appeared, massive and gleaming under distant starlight. Docking was smooth, guided by a welcome that was precise but not overwhelming. Elias stepped into the corridors, feeling the subtle hum of energy, the presence of countless systems, worth of technology concentrated in one vessel. He was met by Empress Xyrella herself. She stood tall, regal, and confident, yet there was a hint of warmth in her expression, a curiosity that Elias had not expected. "Dr. Vorn," she said, her voice steady but not commanding. "I have been waiting to meet the human who healed me. But you did what was necessary without thought of gain or fear. That is rare." He did not sit in councils or command fleets. He treated the wounded, improved medical systems, and shared insights that increased efficiency and understanding among Zyrella's people. He asked questions about alien biology, logistics, and strategy, but always through the lens of compassion and curiosity. He never sought power or position. He only sought to learn and to help. Zyrella observed him closely, noting his calm, rational approach, his quick mind, and his refusal to be swayed by status or intimidation. She realized that humanity possessed a quality her empire had often overlooked: ingenuity combined with conscience. Humans could act decisively, creatively, and morally all at the same time. That was something the galaxy needed more of. Meanwhile, Surin monitored developments outside the flagship. The Solari Dominion had not forgotten Elias. Small fleets attempted to track him, to understand his movements, to persuade or coerce him into serving their interests. But Elias, guided by his understanding of both technology and human behavior, remained one step ahead. He used clever diversions, strategic communication, and calculated delays to keep the Dominion fleets at bay without confrontation. The galaxy was beginning to recognize that Elias was not a pawn. He was not a weapon. He was a mind that could influence events through intelligence, empathy, and creativity. The Tethian Empire, the Solari Dominion, and even independent factions began to understand that they could not manipulate him without consequence. One day, Zyrella invited Elias to a council meeting, not as a subordinate, but as an advisor. She sought his perspective on a border conflict that had escalated between two minor systems. Elias listened carefully, asking questions and offering solutions that emphasized collaboration, mutual understanding, and minimal harm. His suggestions were practical, innovative, and human-centered. The council was impressed. Generals and diplomats, used to command and coercion, were surprised by the clarity and simplicity of his proposals. What Elias offered was not dominance. It was a way to achieve results without unnecessary conflict. Slowly, the discussion shifted from aggression to strategy, compromise, and cooperation. It was a subtle change, but significant. The galaxy was beginning to operate differently, guided by human ingenuity and morality rather than fear alone. Even Zyrella herself began to act differently. Inspired by Elias' example, she reconsidered certain aggressive campaigns, choosing precision and diplomacy where before she might have relied solely on force. She began to realize that humans could offer a perspective no empire had considered. That influence could come from wisdom and creativity, not just technology or fleets. Elias remained humble. He did not take credit for these shifts. He focused on the people around him, on the systems he could repair, and on the small acts of healing that rippled outward. Yet with each day it became clear: one human, acting thoughtfully and with principle, could change the course of the galaxy. The Solari Dominion continued to observe him, but even they began to hesitate. Attempts to coerce or manipulate him failed. Elias' calm confidence, ingenuity, and moral consistency made him unpredictable in the most powerful way. They could not control him, and they could not anticipate the full effect of his actions. Finally, after weeks aboard the flagship, Elias prepared to return to his planet. Zyrella escorted him to the shuttle bay, her expression both serious and respectful. "You have done more than you realize," she said. "Your presence has already changed the course of this galaxy. You have proven that even one human, guided by conscience and skill, can influence events beyond imagination. That is all any of us can do. One person acting with thought, skill, and morality could create change far beyond what anyone might expect." When he arrived back at his small planet, life seemed the same on the surface. Travelers came and went, minor injuries were treated, and devices were repaired. Yet beneath the quiet, the galaxy had shifted. Systems were negotiating differently. Fleets moved with more caution. Leaders reconsidered strategies. Somewhere far away, Empress Zyrella ruled with renewed insight, influenced subtly by the quiet human who had healed her. Elias resumed his work, repairing a broken shuttle for a young trader. He fixed minor injuries, taught careful techniques, and continued his experiments with alien biology. Nothing had changed about his principles, his approach, or his focus on helping others. But he knew now that his actions, even small ones, had consequences far beyond what he had ever imagined. That evening he stood outside, watching the twin moons reflect their light over the plains. The wind was soft, carrying the familiar scent of earth and minerals. He felt a quiet satisfaction. The galaxy had noticed him, yes, but he had remained true to himself. He had not sought power, not sought recognition, not sought domination. He had only used his skills, his intelligence, and his conscience, and that had been enough to shape worlds. Surin appeared quietly at his side. "You have done well," they said. "The galaxy is changed because of you, and yet you remain the same." That is remarkable. One person, guided by skill, conscience, and ingenuity, could influence the fate of empires, shape alliances, and inspire change that no weapon or technology could achieve. And so, life continued on the small planet, quiet and simple on the surface, yet profoundly different beneath. Elias Vorn, a humble doctor with extraordinary hands and a brilliant mind, had healed not just a shoulder but the galaxy itself. And in doing so, he had proven the greatest truth of all, that humans, in their creativity, courage, and morality, could shine brighter than any star. The galaxy was watching, and humanity, through one man's quiet brilliance, had earned its place.